and Israel are waiting for Hamas to respond to a temporary ceasefire proposal. It was put forth by the United States. Israel has agreed. So far, Hamas has not. So the terms of the agreement include the release of hostages held by Hamas in exchange for a 60-day pause in fighting. Now, this comes as there are other headlines out of Gaza. We know that aid distribution centers there, and you can see it. It's frantic getting supplies. They've been overwhelmed. Many of the people that you see here trying to get the basic supplies to sustain life are desperate. They are desperate for the food, desperate for the supplies. In fact, local officials there on the ground say dozens of people have just been hurt because every time they open up an opportunity for the supplies to be available, there's a rush for that aid. So let's turn to Ambassador Daniel Shapiro. He's former U.S. ambassador to Israel and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Ambassador, thank you for talking to us today. Take us through the details here. What is in this agreement for the U.S.? What is in it for Israel? And what will Hamas get if they say yes?
Reed, first it's important to say President Trump had a choice. He could have pushed Israel for an agreement that would be a full end to the war and a full release of all hostages. That was not the Israeli preference. The preference of the Israelis was to do a partial deal. That's what's been proposed now, to release 10 live hostages, a number of deceased hostages as well, for a 60-day pause in the fighting. That would also allow a very significant resumption of the flow of aid back into Gaza under the auspices of the United Nations, the World Food Program, and other entities, international entities, and that would provide some of the aid relief that you just hinted is really needed. But what Hamas is looking for is assurances that after the 60 days are up, the war is not going to restart. Israel won't agree to that. They didn't agree to that after the previous ceasefire, which is why hostilities resumed in March following the previous 60-day ceasefire.
It's a fascinating environment because how do you successfully negotiate with an organization that you yourself have said, speaking to the Israeli voice and the Israeli government, is there to eliminate Hamas? How do you have in that environment a productive conversation when Hamas on the other side of the table knows that Israel has stated they want to see Hamas wiped out?
Yeah, the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, really has his work cut out for him to try to find this middle ground. Again, Hamas is looking for some kind of assurances the war won't resume following the ceasefire. But the alternative, of course, is if there's no ceasefire, that this Israeli operation that's underway is going to continue. Israel, the IDF has said they hope to, within 2 months, seize 75% of the territory of Gaza to confine the Palestinian population to smaller and smaller areas. And that is consistent with the agenda of some of the most far-right members of the Israeli cabinet who really seek a reoccupation of Gaza. That's really bad for Israel's image internationally, and obviously it's bad for Palestinians on the ground. It's probably not going to save the lives of any hostages either. So finding this middle ground, at least for now, and to buy some time and to get some hostages relieved and some more aid in, that's the real critical task that Witkoff has.
Yeah, and you talk about the Palestinians on the ground and that there is that conversation about getting aid into Gaza. The allegation is by some that Israel has not allowed that aid to get in to help the people in large measure. Is that true? And if so, why not?
Israel did block the importation of aid during the previous period after the last ceasefire, when there were still stocks left over that had got in during the ceasefire. But those stocks are really down. You saw the rush on an aid facility when people had access to it. That shows their desperation. There's a new and still somewhat unproven effort to allow private contractors and a new Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to distribute aid directly to Palestinian civilians to try to bypass it going through Hamas's hands. Hamas has stolen aid for its own use and used it as a means of political control. But this is still unproven. And of course, the downside is that Palestinian civilians have to come to these limited locations, travel long distances to get the aid and to bring it back to their families. So if the ceasefire is achieved, that will allow a much larger and broader aid flow to resume through not just that foundation, but through the UN and the World Food Program. There's also some risk, of course, that Hamas will then get its hands on more of that aid. So this is the very tricky balance that the negotiators are trying to strike.
It is tricky business indeed, and we await to see if that U.S.-backed and Israeli-accepted proposal for a ceasefire is accepted by Hamas. We can tell our viewers at home the minute we hear that, you will hear it as well here on CBS News 24/7. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.